Well, we're all talking about it. Many of you pulled up at the local farmers union in the Senex today, and you went and grabbed that cup of coffee and sat and thought about shaking that cup of dice to see who had to pay. And then the one next thing that came up was the weather, right? It was like, when are we ever going to get out in the field? When are we ever going to be able to get back outside? This was one of the longest winters in many people's opinions that they've ever gone through. Well, we can't blame them for it. But we can actually point out he's been pretty doggone accurate about it, and that is Greg Gust with the National Weather Service. Greg, being a weatherman right now has to be a pretty hard job to do. When you went to church on Sunday, you probably got chewed out by a lot of people.
You know, I've been wearing this big target on my back for a lot of years, so got used to it. I say I have thick skin, and it's getting thicker and saggier with the years. So there we go.
It needs to be thick with the wind that we've had out there. Let's go backwards before we go to now and when this might change. You know, I had a chance to visit with you on the radio where you talked about some data that you put together in relation to wind, in relation to this winter, and how that all shook out. Walk people through what you worked on.
So it was just, you know, people through the winter just say, man, this is a windy winter. Man, this is a cold winter. Man, this is a snowy one. So I looked and through the months of December, January, and February, and I actually looked at the main airports, Fargo and Grand Forks first, and I added Bismarck and Minot in there. I've even looked over at Bemidji. I haven't gotten down through Alex yet. But those airports, December, January, February, that 3-month average was the windiest 3 months of any winter season going back. I just looked as far back as 89, 90. Well, then I looked at February alone. In February, the month of February was the windiest month in all those years, all the way back to then. And it was like in Fargo and Grand Forks, 50% windier than average. That's like light beers are a third less calories. This is 50% more wind. And if you look at the amount of time, it was 20 miles an hour. That's the sustained wind, not the gust. 20 miles an hour or faster. It was 3 times as high.
Well,
so there you go.
And believe me, as somebody who isn't big on light beer, I can tell you when I drink it, I can tell the difference. But 50% is a lot. And
it's a lot.
Without being a scientist as you are, and without having access to the data, which you do, I could have told you that. Every time you walked out, it was like it slapped you right in the face. I mean, oftentimes you've heard, growing up here and the Gust family having such a big footprint, you know, people say it, and it's true. I can take cold weather. I just can't take it with the wind at the same time. Yeah. And when I'm sitting there turning the key on my fish house, and you're sitting there and you're like hunkered down because you were smart enough to put the door, and the wind came at you from everywhere this time.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't just come out of the northwest or the southeast. I mean, it was that bad. So was that an indicator to what we're going through now?
Well, we did have that break in March, and that's when I was talking to you. It was actually a pleasant mid-March period in there. April has just been outrageous again. So March gave us an opportunity to melt off the snowpack in a very pleasant fashion, a very easy way with rivers. April has just been horrendous. As you well know, we probably picked up a full, well, if you look at the precipitation across the area, where a typical April would be 3/4 of an inch to an inch of rain. Most areas have seen 3, 4, some pushing 5 inches of water equivalent or more. And that's like a full winter's worth. So when you start seeing both the miserable aspects out in western North Dakota with snowpack, we had quite a bit up here early in April, but that's been all rain the last week or so. You know, the only blessed people are those people down south of Fargo that have gotten mainly rain, no snow, and not quite as bad. But it's just outrageous. And so now we're looking at the flooding. Every river point north from Fargo is going into moderate and pushing major flood stage and beyond. So I don't know where you want to get into that, but April is a mess, as everybody has rightly said.
Well, I want to get into it. The last thing we're going to talk about is the fact that I live south of Fargo. So let's not point that out, that I live where it hasn't been all that bad, other than being cold and windy.
I did want to point out Hankinson as the
Exactly.
blessed location in the state.
Let's start from west to east. You look at what went on with that 2 to 3 day blizzard that left feet of snow upon the ground, and then you compile that with people who haven't really dug out yet. And in Montreal, Williams Electric up there, they've got 800 poles on the ground. I mean, they've got people out of power for, at best, 2 weeks. I mean, the sleet storm that went through, then combine it with the wind you've been talking about, these things are historic by nature. When you look at it from their standpoint, obviously they're going to say, when do we get a break, Greg?
Yeah, and the break is kind of coming here in that first week of May, but we got to get there. So we have we warm up this middle week of this time, and of course Western North Dakota always warms up faster and more than we do here out in the east, but it's going to warm up, but then it's going to slam back down, and we think end of next week, Friday, Saturday, that we're going to have another weather system in here. And we think it's going to be primarily rain, but there's probably somebody up there by Williston or somewhere that's going to be picking up snow out of this again. And again, how much is going to be in there? I'll just say that loosely, we're looking at widespread half-inch or more rain over much of the state and into northwest Minnesota. And there could be areas that are picking up an inch or more of water. And how much snow, I don't know. But that's again a week after the one. You talked about that first 1, 2, 3 feet of snow earlier in April, and then you throw just this last weekend, some of those areas in western part of the state got 12 to 18 inches of snow again, and ice. So one of the things that happened was as that first snow starts to melt, the ground gets very soft, and then you throw in the next snow and ice and wind, and so those poles are going over. Same thing was happening, by the way, here in northwest Minnesota, south of Thief River Falls. There were areas where power poles were blowing over or falling down just because they were waterlogged. Yeah. So that's a problem. And, we're not going to dry out between now and next weekend.
And that's the scary part for a lot of these.
That's
utilities.
The scary part, yep.
So South Central North Dakota, which was so desperate for moisture, not all that unhappy. I get that. They'd like to be in the field already. But I want to talk about the Red River Valley now. Fargo came out of this okay, as you mentioned. On the southern end of the valley, we didn't have just tons and tons of moisture to send them. But you go north of Fargo now. And you go Grand Forks north, you look at Crookston, Minnesota, they're going through some tough times, Greg.
Yeah, in just even west of Fargo and, through central western Cass County, there's roads washing out and flooded and all this because of overland flows. So there's enough of that, but as you get further north, and that's you get up into Grigg Steel Trail or Norman County on the Minnesota side and move north, Monoman County and everything north, widespread overland flooding from Friday into Saturday and into Sunday, and lots of township county roads getting water over them, a lot of those getting washouts because we're thawed enough so that water overtopping the road is going to start eating away at it. Even some of the smaller reservoirs, now not the big reservoirs and the big dams around here, but a lot of the smaller ones are showing erosion. And so you get some of that overtopping. So, that's one of the things to watch out for this coming week is a lot of those areas are very full and overtopping. There could be some breakout flows there again. So all of that is still muddying up in a big way the landscape. So now what's in the rivers? And a lot of that main water that's in the rivers started as water from all these rains earlier in the month and filled them up. And then you throw this another 1, 2, probably in the last week, we have seen 3 to 5 inches of moisture. 3 to 5 inches. I talked about how big the foot wound was in April, but just if you get north from Fargos, a lot of that area has had 3 to 5 inches of either rain or it's that snow and snow melt that's coming in. So again, that's got all the rivers up. Crookston over the weekend was battling. We were forecasting near a flood of record. They came in, they turned over last night and came in only at 3rd place. So just a quarter of a foot below the 69 flood and a foot and a quarter below 97. So they're over the hump. Grand Forks is still rising. Of course, Hallstatt is still rising. Look at Hillsborough. The Goose just ramped up with that first Friday rain, and now coming in with the Saturday and Sunday stuff is coming in. So they're just currently, I'm just looking at that because I think they're coming in, and the update should be out shortly, but they could be coming in half a foot below their flood of record.
Yeah. It's got people scared. I can tell you that as someone who has a sister in Grand Forks and still remembers 97 and losing her house.
Oh, yeah. But they've got the flood walls in, man.
Yeah.
They've got the flood walls, and they started putting those in Sunday and finished up today. And so those are blocked in.
But I'm talking more mental than anything else. I'm talking more, here we go again. Everybody needs to see something work before they trust it. So, Greg.
But we need to be mindful too, Joel, as we talked about, there are people that are inside the flood protection, and then there are the people that are outside. So there's still roads being blocked off, people sandbagging and all of that out in the countryside.
This is going to be an expensive year to be a township officer.
Yeah.
I will tell you that. Greg, good to visit with you. Thank you.